Hello everybody. In our series of applied neuroanatomy, today we are going to discuss the anatomy of the limbic system. The limbic system is a system which is present on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, and this system consists of several components, which is the amygdala, the hippocampus, and from the hippocampus the fornix, ending into the mammillary bodies, which are part of the hypothalamus, the anterothalamic nuclei involved in the emotion circuit or the circuit of Papez, the cingulate gyrus, and the prefrontal region. This is a view of the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere, showing how is the limbic system represented. Here, the green sulcus here, the gyrus here, is the cingulate gyrus, and then it is connected to the parahippocampal gyrus. The parahippocampal gyrus contains deep to it the hippocampus. The hippocampus, getting out from it are the fimbria of the fornix, and forming then the cruri, then the body and the column of the fornix, ending into the mammillary body. A part of the limbic system, as we said, anterior to the hippocampus and parahippocampal gyrus, is the amygdaloid nucleus, what we call the amygdala, present in the uncus, and the orbital and medial prefrontal cortex. This is another view showing the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. This is the cingulate gyrus, this is the parahippocampal gyrus, this is the hippocampus, and the fornix, ending mammillary body, the anterior thalamus, and the hypothalamus. And this is a more zoomed view, showing more details about this limbic system, showing that the hippocampus, as we said, is forming the fornix ending into the mammillary body. The amygdala also has a C, another C, internal C, which is the stria terminalis, connecting the amygdala with the septal region, hypothalamic region, and the septal nuclei. And also, the amygdala is connected to the olfactory bulb, olfactory nerve, by the lateral olfactory stria. So, from this picture we can see that this is the hippocampus, fornix, column of the fornix, mammillary body, amygdala, stria terminalis, septal nuclei, anterior group of thalamic nuclei involved in the circle of Papez, and the hypothalamus. This is a more detailed view showing how is the hippocampus giving the fornix and ending into the mammillary body, and how the amygdala is connected to the olfactory nerve by the lateral olfactory stria. This is a more detailed view of the pathway going here, hippocampus, hippocampal formation, forming the fimbria of the hippocampus, the cruri, the body of the fornix, and then ending by the column, ending into the mammillary body. Also the amygdala through the stria terminalis ending into the septal region. And there is also a connection between the hypothalamus and the medial forebrain and the medial cerebral cortex, called the medial forebrain bundle, and also some of the fibers of the fornix ending into the anterior thalamus. So again, when we mean the limbic system, the cingulate gyrus, parahippocampal gyrus, hippocampus, fornix, mammillary body, amygdala, stria terminalis, septal nuclei, and the medial forebrain region. This is a posterior view showing also that the amygdala is receiving the tail of the caudate nucleus caudate nucleus forming a C and forming the lateral, as you will see, the lateral boundary, the frontal horn, and fusing with the putamen, which is a part of the basal ganglia, as we'll see in the extrapyramidal system. This is a view of the hippocampus. You know that the hippocampus has got teeth, a head, teeth, has got a body, and has got a tail, and has got a head. If you compare the previous view, this is the teeth of the hippocampus is called the dentate gyrus, and the dentate gyrus, the part leading to it is called the dentate sulcus or the hippocampal sulcus. This seahorse is carrying on its surface a hat. The hat is called the alveus. The hat has fringes. The fringes are the fimbria, and he's carrying on his head a bag of water, which is the temporal horn, Ammon's horn, the temporal horn of the lateral ventricle. So the hippocampus is forming the floor of the temporal horn of the lateral ventricle. Also, the hippocampus, as we said, has got a neck called the subiculum, has got a belly, which is called the parasubiculum, and dressed by the parahippocampal gyrus, and then before the tail, there is a sulcus here called collateral sulcus, and the rest of the tail is the fusiform gyrus. So again, the hippocampus has got teeth, dentate gyrus, reaching it through the dentate sulcus or hippocampal sulcus, and carrying, has got a head, carrying on the head a hat, alveus, with fringes, the fimbria, bag of water, the temporal horn, containing the choroid plexus, and you will see here also that this bag of water, temporal horn, is closed from here, but it is opened medially. This opening on the medial surface of the temporal horn is called the choroidal fissure, as we will see later. Another view, another side, hippocampus, dentate gyrus, head, alveus, fimbria, bag of water, subiculum, parahippocampal gyrus, the collateral sulcus, and the fusiform gyrus. A more detailed view showing also the same thing. So always remember the hippocampus, the normal seahorse, the teeth, the head, the hat, the fringes of the head, the bag of water, the neck, the belly, and the dressing over the belly, and then a sulcus at the end, collateral, and the fusiform. If you see an inferior surface of the brain, you will see this structure, which is the most medial part of the inferior surface of the temporal lobe. It is just lateral to the midbrain, the brainstem, partly, namely the midbrain. This is the hippocampus, the parahippocampal gyrus, as you see it from inferiorly. And if you look from inside the ventricle, you will find that the hippocampus is a structure present on the medial wall of the floor of the temporal horn, and it gives rise to the fornix. So if we cut the cerebral hemisphere and we see this is the lateral ventricle, frontal horn, the body, the trigone, the temporal horn, we'll find a structure on the floor of the temporal horn, the medial part of the floor. This is the hippocampus, and an elevation on the medial part of the occipital horn, which is the calcar avis, as we'll see later. So this is the hippocampus, this is the calcar avis. Another view, this is to stress upon a very important fact that this is the choroidal fissure. What is the choroidal fissure? I was always perplexed from reaching exactly what we mean by choroidal fissure. Actually, the blood vessels are present outside the brain. And you know that the anterior choroidal artery and the lateral posterior choroidal artery want to supply the choroid plexus. But the choroid plexus is present inside the ventricle. So how the blood vessels can reach the choroid plexus inside the ventricle? It can reach it through a fissure present on the medial wall of the temporal horn of the lateral ventricle, which is a layer of pia mater, and the blood vessels enter with this layer of pia mater through the choroidal fissure. So, as you will see later, all what is below the choroidal fissure is the point of interest if you are doing an epilepsy surgery and you want to do the amygdalohippocampectomy. You have to work to remove the structures forming the floor of the temporal horn, and nothing to do with the roof, nothing to do with the medial wall, just the floor of the temporal horn. This is showing you the neck of the seahorse, called the subiculum. Functions of the limbic system. We all know about the hippocampus is involved in memory, namely the short-term memory, what we call the explicit memory. What is the explicit memory? There is explicit and implicit. It's not our subject today, but the explicit memory is when you study, when you do an effort to retain, like in learning and studying for exams. For instance, you read the thing once and twice and 3 and 4 times so that you can retain it. You retain it through the hippocampus and in the medial temporal lobe, which is part concerned with the memory. And it is concerned also with the spatial memory, where you can reach certain places. How can you reach the address? How can you work in streets? How you can imagine the spatial configuration of your surrounding so that you go in for a distance, a very far distance, and having this spatial memory, you don't have to do an effort to reach what you want. The amygdala is involved in emotions, and some of the emotions are related to memory also. For example, fear. For example, anger. These emotions are present in the amygdala. And also, when you remember something, you remember also the emotions that were accompanying this event. For instance, if you remember a good event in your life, you will have the same happy emotions of this event by the amygdala. How the amygdala is also connected to the autonomic response to emotions via connections with the hypothalamus, as it is concerned with the emotions, and emotions are the function of the sympathetic, and the upper motor control of the sympathetic is present in the hypothalamus. So definitely this is part of the connections between the amygdala and the hypothalamus. Also, the amygdala is involved in olfaction. As we said, it is connected to the lateral olfactory stria and the sexual desire. Here we have to mention again the circuit for emotions, or the circuit of Papez, which is one of the important bases of psychosurgery. As we said, we have the cingulate gyrus and the structure deep inside it, the cingulum. The parahippocampal gyrus, the structure deep to it is the hippocampus. From the hippocampus, we get the subiculum, and from the hippocampus, the fornix. The fornix goes down to the mammillary bodies, and from the mammillary body, mammillary nuclei, to the mammillothalamic tract, going to the anterior thalamic region, internal capsule, cingulate gyrus again. So again, cingulate gyrus, cingulum, parahippocampal gyrus, hippocampus, fornix, mammillary body, mammillothalamic tract, anterothalamic nuclei, internal capsule, cingulate gyrus. This is part of applied anatomy, and this is concerning mainly the neurosurgeons. If you want to have an idea, it's good, but if you are a neurosurgeon, you need to know how this is applied for surgery of epilepsy, temporal lobe surgery for epilepsy. For epilepsy surgery, we do one of two things, either anterior temporal lobectomy, removing the temporal lobe with the amygdala and with the parahippocampal gyrus and hippocampus, or we do the amygdalo-hippocampectomy. And remember, when you do the amygdalo, you have to remove the ancus, which is the cortex, and when you do remove the hippocampus, you remove the parahippocampal gyrus with it, because the cortex is the source of epilepsy discharge, scarring on the medial temporal cortex. So remember, when you do an amygdalo-hippocampectomy, you remove also the ancus and the parahippocampal gyrus. And this is the ways you can reach the hippocampus. As we said, this is the temporal horn, and the hippocampus is present in the medial part of the floor of the temporal horn. How can you reach it? You can reach it from the sylvian fissure, going through the sylvian fissure to the hippocampus, or transcortical from the middle temporal gyrus, as you will see, or subtemporal. You will evade the temporal lobe, you reach the medial temporal lobe so that you can reach the hippocampus, but this is hazardous because the retraction of the temporal lobe is limited by a vein of Labé. The transcortical, which is the easiest and the most simple, we go through the middle temporal gyrus. It's not important as the superior temporal gyrus. You can go from the left or the right side, no problem. The middle temporal gyrus, patient is positioned supine, head parallel to the floor. Entry point is localized by the neuronavigator. This is the neuronavigator, and this is the medial temporal region where we are going to target the part we are going to excise. Two self-retaining retractors are applied for clear visualization of the ventricle and the anatomical key points. And here you see we are doing the middle temporal gyrus. We are removing an incision, and then we are putting two self-retaining retractors, and through the temporal horn we reach the floor of the temporal horn and we start working on the hippocampus. The incision in the temporal gyrus is 2.5 to 3 centimeters from the temporal pole and 2 to 2.5 centimeters in length towards the temporal horn. So this is the superior temporal gyrus, middle temporal gyrus. It is 2 to 2.5 to 3 centimeters from the pole, and the length is 2.5 to 3 centimeters in length. The choroidal fissure is identified, and as I told you before, avoid any incision above the choroidal fissure. This is a useless work. What we need is in the floor of the temporal horn, that's to say below the choroidal fissure. Avoid injuring the choroid plexus and the choroidal vessels. So here is the choroidal fissure. These are the vessels, and this is the target we are going to remove: the hippocampus, the parahippocampal gyrus, and the amygdala and the ancus. You go subpial. When you reach from the middle temporal gyrus, you go inside the white matter, and you reach the hippocampus, parahippocampal gyrus, the ancus, and advance medially, resecting the parahippocampal gyrus from inside the pia. So this is another time the view of the temporal horn. We remove this, but we leave the pia on the medial surface. You take out this, leaving the pia mater, just the pia mater. Resection of the ancus subpial reveals the anterior incisural space where the carotid artery and third nerve are present. Resection of the parahippocampal gyrus subpial also reveals the posterior cerebral artery, the optic tract, and the lateral midbrain in the lateral incisorial space, and the section is extended posteriorly to the tectum of the midbrain. So this is the view. This is the left side. This is the temporal horn, the frontal temporal lobe, the frontal lobe, the Sylvian fissure. And if you are taking out the temporal lobe, the medial part of the temporal lobe, you will find the veil of the pia. Now I don't have this veil, but in surgery you will find a veil of pia mater, after which you can see the anterior incisorial space, as we said, where you can find the supraclinoid carotid artery, where you can find the oculomotor nerve, where you can find the posterior communicating and anterior choroidal arteries, and also the middle incisorial space, where you can find the lateral incisorial space, the posterior communicating artery, where you can find the trochlear nerve also, where you can find the trochlear and the oculomotor nerve and the lateral midbrain, and you should excise posteriorly up to the tectum. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to meet soon with another session of applied neuroanatomy. Thank you.